Here we have our first example of a system of linear inequalities. Now, I worked out each inequality in dividing slope and our y-intercept. So let's talk about the first inequality. So it's y less than negative 1 over 2x plus 2. So our slope is negative 1/2. Since it's negative, it tells me that the numerator will go down 1 unit. Our denominator will go to the right 2 units. Now for the y-intercept, it's a number by itself, so it's parenthesis 0, comma, since it's plus 2, it's a positive 2, close parenthesis. Now, in our second linear inequality, it started off as a whole number. So what I did was I changed the whole number into a fraction. So it's y greater than or equal 2 over 1 x minus 3. Next, I identified a slope which is positive 2 over 1. Since it's positive, my numerator, it will tell me to go up 2 units, and then my denominator tells me to go right 1 unit. Next, the y-intercept. The y-intercept is a number by itself. Since it's minus 3, it's going to be negative 3. So my y-intercept is parenthesis 0, comma, negative 3, close parenthesis. Now once I got all my information that I needed to graph, I'm going to use this information to graph the line. Alright, for the first inequality, I'm going to start at 0, comma 2. So that's a coordinate point on the y-axis right here. So 0, comma 2. Next, I'm going to use the slope. It tells me to go down 1 unit and right 2 units. 1, 2. And I'm going to repeat the process. Down 1, right 2, right here. Alright, so I have three points. So I would just need 3 points to graph a line. In this case, our linear inequality. Now, based on this linear inequality sign, this will be a dotted or dashed line. So I'm going to write a dotted dash line. Alright, now I'm going to graph the second linear inequality. So I'm going to start at our y-intercept, which is 0, comma, negative 3. It's right here. Alright, so our slope tells us to go up 2 and then right 1. So I'm going to go up 2, right 1. Up 2, right 1. Up 2, right 1. So I got 3 points. I'm going to just use those 3 points to help me graph. Alright, based on this inequality sign right here, greater than or equal to, it's going to be a solid line. So let me show you a solid line. So here's my solid line. That's it. Now, from there, I'm going to look again at the inequality sign again. For the first one, the blue line, it says y less than. So we see that the inequality sign is facing away in the opposite direction. So since it's facing away, I'm going to shade below. So what I'm going to do is shade a little bit below the line. Alright, next I'm going to work on the second inequality. If we look at this, it's y greater than or equal. The inequality sign is facing y. It opens to y. So that means we're going to shade above the line. We're going to shade on top of the line. So above or on top of the line is like this. Now, you don't have to shade the whole thing. The reason I shade a little bit is because this is y. We are to determine if the shading overlaps. So if you look at the blue lines, the blue shading, it's coming down here. And if you look at the red shading, it's going up. So here, I'm not going to worry about it. Here, I'm not going to worry about it. Here, I'm not going to worry about it. I'm only going to worry about this part right here. The reason is, these two shading, the blue shading and the red shading, they're going to overlap each other. So they're going to shade over top of each other. So basically, my shading of this example would be here. So that's my shading. So you don't have to shade the whole thing. You can shade it like this, and then I'll accept that as full credit on test, but make sure that I can see it clearly. So when you have an example like this, you're going to graph, and then you're going to shade only where it overlaps. So I repeat, only where it overlaps. So you see how I only shade a little bit for the red line, and I shade a little bit for the blue line? I only see where it's going to overlap. That's all I'm looking for. So that's all I needed. Here we have our second set of system of linear inequalities. So on our first one it says y greater than negative 3 over 2x minus 2. And the second one it says y less than or equal x plus 3. So let's work on the first one. Y greater than negative 3 over 2x minus 2. So from there, my slope m is going to be just a number in front of x, so negative 3 over 2. So looking at my slope, since it's negative 3 over 2, that means on my numerator it will tell me to go down 3 times, 3 units, and then on the denominator it will tell me to go to the right 2 units. That's it. Next, I'm going to look at the minus 2. So that's going to be for my y-intercept, which is parenthesis 0, comma, negative 2, close parenthesis. That's it. Alright, next, I'm going to work on the second inequality. Y less than or equal to x plus 3. Now, since it's just x, let me remind you that when it's x by itself, it has an invisible number, which is 1. So I'm going to write 1 right here. So since it's 1, I can still convert that into a fraction by putting 1 underneath. So my slope is actually positive 1 over 1. Since it's positive, my numerator will tell me to go up 1 unit, and then my denominator will tell me to go to the right 1 unit. Next, I'm going to do the y-intercept. So with that, it's going to be plus 3. So my y-intercept, the coordinate of it is parenthesis 0, comma, positive 3, close parenthesis. Alright, I got all my information that I needed in order to graph. So let's start graphing. So first, I'm going to graph the first linear inequality. So starting at 0, comma, negative 2, which is right here, it tells me I'm going to go down 3, right 2. 1, 2, 3, right 2. 1, 2. So I have 2 points here. Now if I want to add another one, I'm going to go opposite direction. So up 3, 1, 2, 3, and then left 2, 1, 2. So I repeat. If I'm going to go into the opposite direction from the y-intercept, I'm going to do the opposite directions. Up 3, right 2. So I have my 3 points. Now based on the inequality sign that I have here, it's going to be a dash or dotted line. Alright, next I'm going to work on the second linear inequality. My y-intercept is 0, comma 3, so it's going to be up here. Now it's telling me that I'm going to go up 1, right 1. So let's do that. Up 1, right 1. Up 1, right 1. So I got 3 points, so it's going to help me graph a good line. Alright, now based on the inequality sign in the second inequality, less than or equal, this will be a solid line. So my solid line is going to be like this. Alright, so we finished graphing our linear inequality lines. So based on the blue one, our first one, it's facing Y, it opens to Y. So that means that I'm going to shade on top of the line or above the line. Alright, and then our second inequality, the sign, it's facing away from Y, opposite of Y. So I'm going to shade below the line. I'm going to shade underneath the line. So from that, I'm going to only shade where the areas are going to overlap. Since on the blue line, it's going up, shading above the line, and on the red line, it's shading below. So this is the area where the shading is going to overlap. So I'm going to overlap or shade where it's going to overlap. So that's the shading I expect to see on the test or on the quiz. So again, you don't have to shade the whole thing. I only shade a little part of it underneath the red line, shade a little part of it above the blue line, because I want to see where the shading will overlap, cross each other, so that way I can shade only the area that I'm looking for. To review, the shading part right here, it means that the coordinate points in this overlapping shading area will work for the inequalities or system of inequality. In our third example of the system of linear inequality, we have y greater than 1/2 x plus 2, and then y less than or equal 1/2 x minus 2. So let's identify our slope and y-intercept. For the first one, y greater than 1/2 x plus 2. Now my slope, the number in front of x, is positive 1/2. So that means that I'm going to go up 1 and then right 2. And then our y-intercept will be the number by itself. So parenthesis 0, comma, since it's plus 2, it's a positive 2. Close parenthesis. So I have all my information for that inequality. Now let's work on the second one. Y less than or equal 1/2 x minus 2. So again, the slope is the number in front of x, so positive 1/2. So in this case, since it's positive, it means up 1 and then right 2. For our y-intercept, it's going to be the number by itself. So open parenthesis 0, comma, since it's minus 2, this will be a negative 2, close parenthesis. So I have my slope and my y-intercept. Alright, so let's graph our first line. Starting at our y-intercept, 0, comma 2 is going to be up here. Now, it's telling me for the slope, up 1, right 2. So I'm going to go up 1, right 2. Up 1, right 2. So I got 3 points I'm going to graph right here. So based on the inequality sign, it's going to be a dotted dash line. Alright, next, we're going to graph the second linear inequality. Our y-intercept is 0, comma, negative 2, which is right here. And then our slope is telling us to go up 1, right 2. So starting from the y-intercept, up 1, right 2. Up 1, right 2. Alright, I got 3 points. Now, based on the inequality sign right here, it's going to be a solid line. So I'm going to graph a solid line. Alright, so now let's talk about the shading. So the first one, we see that the inequality sign is facing Y. It opens to Y. That means that I'm going to shade on top of the line, above the line. So a little bit like this. And then our second one, the inequality sign is facing away from Y, opposite of Y. So that means I'm going to shade below the line, underneath the line. So I'm looking at the graph. The blue one is going to be above the line. So if it's going to be above the line, the shading is going to be up here. Now for the red one, the second one, the shading is underneath. So the shading will be here. Now let me darken this again. Alright. If we look closely at the graph, we see that the shading doesn't overlap each other, doesn't cross each other. So in the event you have something like this, where I notice that the lines are parallel to each other, meaning that they have the same slope, which in fact they do. So in that event, if the shading are in opposite ends, on opposite side, meaning that they don't cross each other, they don't overlap each other, nor touch each other, in the event you have something like that, your answer will be no solution. So that's going to be our final answer. No solution. Now again, the only time you have no solution is when your shading are facing opposite direction. They're not crossing each other. They're not touching each other. They're not overlapping each other. So in that event, your final answer is no solution. You still have to graph in order to see that it's no solution.